The restaurant buzzed with soft laughter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of music drifting through the air. Warm golden lights hung above the long table, casting everything in a glow that felt almost celebratory. Almost. Tonight was supposed to be mine. After 11 years at Stratford and Company, I had built systems no one else could manage, fixed crises no one else could solve, and quietly carried projects that kept entire departments running. For months, Preston Carmine had been hinting subtle comments in meetings, approving nods, late-night messages that said, "You're next, Landon." I believed him. I adjusted the cuff of my blazer, glancing around at my colleagues, laughing, toasting, leaning into conversations. This wasn't just another company dinner. This was my promotion party. Or at least that's what I had been led to believe. At the head of the table, Preston stood tapping his glass lightly. The room fell silent. My heart started to pound, not with doubt, but anticipation. 11 years distilled into a single moment. Tonight, he began, voice smooth and confident. "I want to recognize someone truly exceptional." I felt it before he said anything else. That quiet shift in the room. The kind you don't notice unless you've spent years reading people the way I have. Someone who has made an incredible impact in a very short time. My smile faltered. Short time. Preston turned slightly, his gaze landing past me. Chloe Bennett. Applause broke out instantly. For a second, I didn't move. 3 months. She had been here for 3 months. "Chloe," he continued, "your leadership, creativity, and fresh perspective have elevated this team beyond expectations. It's rare to see someone deliver at this level so quickly. I'm excited to announce your promotion to senior manager." The room erupted. I clapped. Of course I did. My hands moved automatically, my smile settling perfectly into place, as if it had been rehearsed. Years of professionalism don't disappear under pressure, they sharpen. Chloe stood flush, surprised, accepting congratulations, as if she had earned every second of it. Maybe she thought she had. Preston glanced at me like an afterthought. "And Landon," he added almost casually, "you've been reliable. We appreciate that." A pause. Then with a faint smirk, "You might want to take a few notes from Chloe." Laughter, light, casual, effortless, like none of it mattered. I lifted my glass. To Chloe, I said, my voice calm, steady. "Congratulations." The words were perfect, controlled, professional. No one at that table saw the shift happen, but it did. Because in that exact moment, while I was smiling, clapping, celebrating, I stopped being the person who was waiting to be recognized and started becoming the one who was about to leave. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe, only if this story truly resonates with you. That small action helps this story reach someone who needs it and makes you part of something meaningful. I'd also love to know, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Leave a comment. I read everyone. The next part of this story includes some fictional elements and AI-assisted details for emotional and educational purposes. Thank you for being here. The street was quieter than I expected. The noise from the restaurant faded the moment the door closed behind me, replaced by the steady rhythm of traffic and distant city sounds. I stood under the soft glow of a street lamp, my reflection faintly visible on the dark screen of my phone. I didn't open any messages. I went straight to compose. Subject: resignation letter. My thumb hovered for half a second. Then I began typing. "Dear Preston, please accept this as my formal resignation, effective immediately. No explanations, no emotions, no references to the dinner, the promotion, or the years I had spent building things no one ever documented properly." I kept it clean, precise, the same way I handled every system I had ever been responsible for. "Thank you for the opportunities over the past 11 years. Best regards, Landon Reese." I read it once, not to change anything, but to confirm that there was nothing left to say. There wasn't. I attached nothing else. No transition plan, no offer to assist. If 11 years of work could be dismissed in a single sentence, it didn't require a longer goodbye. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the moment most people hesitate. They replay conversations, consider consequences, wonder if they're overreacting. I didn't, because this decision didn't start tonight. Tonight only made it visible. I pressed send. The email disappeared from my screen in an instant, replaced by a quiet confirmation. No sound, no dramatic shift, just a small, irreversible action. I exhaled slowly. For the first time that evening, my shoulders relaxed. Not anger, not regret. Relief. I slipped my phone back into my bag and looked up at the skyline. Offices like mine lights, still on people, still working, still waiting for something they believed would eventually come. I had done that once, not anymore. I turned and started walking, the sound of my heels steady against the pavement. Behind me, nothing had changed yet. Inside that building, the celebration would continue the decisions already made. But by morning, something would be different. They just didn't know it yet. And that was the part I understood better than anyone. Monday morning felt almost ordinary. The lobby of Stratford and Company looked the same as it always had. Polished floors, quiet greetings at the front desk, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the break room. No alarms, no visible disruption. Just another start to another week. I walked in at my usual time. Not early, not late, exactly as expected. A few heads turned when I stepped onto the floor. Subtle at first, then less so. Word hadn't fully spread yet, but something had shifted. People sense change before they understand it. I placed my bag beside my desk and powered on my computer, moving through the motions with practiced ease. Screens loaded, emails refreshed, systems came online one by one, the same way they had for years. Across the room, Chloe sat a little straighter than usual, her posture carrying the weight of her new title. She avoided looking in my direction, focusing instead on her screen like it might give her answers she didn't yet have. I didn't interrupt her. This wasn't about her. Right on cue, a door opened down the hall. Landon, my office, now. Preston's voice cut through the floor sharper than usual. Not loud, but urgent enough that conversation stopped mid-sentence. A few people glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I stood up, smoothing the front of my blazer, before walking toward his office. Same hallway, same door, different balance. Inside, Preston was already seated, a printed copy of my resignation letter on his desk. He looked up the moment I stepped in, his expression, tight controlled, but not composed. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Yes." I took the seat across from him without waiting to be told. Effective immediately. He stared at me for a moment like he was trying to find something in my face that would make this make sense. "This is sudden," he said. "We haven't discussed this." A small pause. Neither had the promotion. I held his gaze, letting the silence sit between us just long enough. Then I spoke. "You didn't discuss a lot of things." Preston leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, as if trying to reset the conversation. "Landon, that wasn't personal," he said, fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the desk. "Chloe just performed better. That's all this is." I tilted my head, slightly studying him. "She's been here 3 months. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifted forward, changing tactics. "You know how much I value you," he continued. 11 years. You've been a key part of this company. I don't want to lose you over a misunderstanding." I almost smiled. "A misunderstanding," I repeated quietly. The word hung there hollow. "You stood in front of the entire team." I said, my voice calm, measured, and told me to take notes from someone who just joined. "You dismissed 11 years of work in a single sentence. That's not a misunderstanding." His jaw tightened. "Look, maybe I could have handled the announcement differently," he admitted, though there was more irritation than regret in his tone. "But resigning like this, it's an emotional decision." I shook my head once. If it were emotional, I would have walked out that night. That got his attention. I didn't. I continued. I stayed. I finished the evening. Then I went home, thought it through, and made a decision. A deliberate one. His fingers curled slightly on the desk. "So what's your plan?" he asked, voice sharper now. "You think you can just walk into another company? You're under a non-compete, Landon." There it was. Control. I let out a soft breath, then stood up slowly. "I'm not going to a competitor." That pause again. This time heavier. He frowned. Then where exactly are you going? I met his eyes steady. Do you remember Victor Hale? I asked. The name landed instantly. I saw it in the way his expression shifted. Of course he remembered. Victor had been the operations director Preston forced out last year. Too direct. Too difficult to control. He reached out to me months ago, I said. He's building something new. He wanted me to lead operations. Preston's posture changed just slightly. I turned him down at the time. I let that sink in. Then added quietly, I didn't turn him down on Friday. Silence settled over the room, heavier than before. Preston stared at me, the calculation in his eyes no longer hidden. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if the outcome he was trying to prevent had already moved beyond his reach. You're leaving for his company? He finally asked, voice tight. I start next Monday. The words landed clean. No hesitation. No space for negotiation. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair, the polished confidence he carried so easily now starting to crack. Land and be realistic, he said. This company has been your foundation for over a decade. You're walking away from stability for a startup that might not even last. I watched him for a moment. This was the part where most people start defending their decision. Explaining. Justifying. I didn't. I'm not walking away from stability, I said calmly. I'm walking away from a place that only sees my value when it's about to lose it. His jaw tightened again. We can fix this, he said quickly. We can revisit the promotion, adjust your role, increase your compensation. I raised a hand, stopping him. You had 11 years to fix it. The room went still. You had 11 years to recognize my work without me having to threaten to leave. 11 years to treat me like I mattered before it became inconvenient not to. His expression shifted from frustration to something sharper. You're making a mistake. Maybe I said. I stood smoothing the front of my blazer, the same controlled movement I had repeated countless times before meetings, presentations, negotiations. But this time was different. But it's my decision. I turned toward the door, my hand resting briefly on the handle before pausing. You once told me to take notes, I said without looking back. A beat. Maybe this is the part you should remember. I stepped out into the hallway, closing the door behind me. The floor had gone quiet again. People pretended to work eyes, flicking up just long enough to confirm what they already suspected. I walked back to my desk, the weight of the moment no longer pressing down on me. It was gone, replaced by something lighter, something clear. I picked up the small box I had prepared earlier, placing the last of my things inside with careful precision. No rush, no hesitation, just completion. If you believe I made the right call by walking away calmly instead of staying where I was disrespected, drop a 1 in the comments. Sometimes the strongest move isn't to fight, it's knowing exactly when to leave. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and I stepped inside without looking back. The mirror-lined walls reflected a version of me I hadn't seen in a long time. Not exhausted, not waiting, just certain. I adjusted my grip on the box in my hands, steady and unhurried, as the doors closed and the building quietly disappeared from view. By the time I reached the lobby, a few messages had already started to come in. Rachel was the first. Is it true? I read it, then typed back. Yes. 3 letters. No explanation. A few seconds later, another message. Wow. I mean, I get it. But I didn't think you'd actually leave. I paused, then slipped my phone back into my bag without replying. Some things didn't need to be explained. Not anymore. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I walked past the glass doors, the company logo reflecting faintly behind me, before fading into the background. For 11 years, that name had meant stability, identity, routine. Now it meant nothing. The first real sign that things weren't as stable as they believed came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. Rachel, Kathy, sorry, Landon, it's chaos here. I smiled slightly at the typo. Preston called an emergency meeting this morning. No one knows how to handle half the systems you used to manage. Another message followed almost immediately. And Chloe? She's struggling. She doesn't even know where to start. I leaned back in my chair, reading the words again, not with satisfaction, but with quiet understanding. This wasn't sabotage. This was absence. For years, I had been the invisible layer, holding everything together. The person who fixed problems before they became visible. The one who made sure nothing ever broke loudly enough to be noticed. Now, without that layer, everything was starting to show, and they were just beginning to realize what had actually been keeping things running all along. The message didn't stop there. A few minutes later, Rachel sent another update. 3 clients have already asked for you by name. I stared at the screen for a second longer this time. That part didn't surprise me. Relationships don't transfer automatically just because a title does. Trust isn't listed in a company org chart. It builds quietly over time in calls that run too late, in problems solved, before they escalate in decisions made when no one else is paying attention. Another message came in. They're not happy, Landon. They said things feel off. I exhaled slowly, setting my phone down on the desk beside me. At Carter Hale Consulting, the office felt completely different. Smaller, yes. Less polished. But there was movement here. Intent. Conversations that actually led somewhere. No one was pretending. My assistant knocked lightly on the open door. You have a call on line 1, she said. A company called Dawson and Pierce. They said they used to work with you. I nodded once. Put them through. A familiar voice came on the line moments later. Landon. There was no hesitation in his tone. I heard you made a move. I did, I replied. A brief pause. Good. Because we've been trying to get clarity from your old team all week, and no one seems to know what's going on. I leaned back slightly in my chair. What can I help you with? We're reviewing our contracts, he said. And to be honest, we'd rather work with you than with a system that's already starting to slip. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about convincing anyone. They had already made up their minds. And one by one, without pressure, without persuasion, the shift began to happen. Not because I took anything with me, but because what mattered most had never belonged to the company in the first place. By the end of the week, the pattern was impossible to ignore. 1 call turned into 3. 3 turned into 5. Different companies, same conversation. The tone was always polite, but underneath it there was something more direct. Uncertainty. They're slow to respond. We're not getting clear answers. Things feel different since you left. I didn't reach out first. I didn't need to. Every conversation started with them, and every decision they made followed naturally. At Carter Hale Consulting, my calendar filled faster than expected. Strategy meetings, onboarding sessions, transition calls. Work that used to be invisible now had structure support and recognition. Victor didn't micromanage. He trusted. Take the lead on operations, he told me during one of our first meetings. Build it the way you know it should be built. No hesitation, no conditions. I nodded once. That was enough. Back at my old company, things were moving in the opposite direction. Rachel's updates became more frequent. Another client is pushing back. Preston had to reschedule 2 major reviews because no one had the numbers ready. Chloe looks completely overwhelmed. I read every message, but I didn't respond to most of them. There was nothing to add. This wasn't a situation I needed to influence. It was already unfolding on its own. Late Friday afternoon, as I was reviewing a new operational framework with my team, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Rachel. It was an email. From Preston. Subject, let's talk. I opened it, scanning the short message. Landon. I believe we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. Let me know when you're available. I leaned back in my chair, reading it once more. The same man who had dismissed me without hesitation was now choosing his words carefully. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. I closed my laptop slowly, already knowing what my response would be. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was unsure, but because there was no urgency anymore. I let the email sit unopened for the rest of the afternoon, while I finished my meetings, reviewed reports, and walked my team through a transition plan that was already ahead of schedule. By the time the office started to quiet down, I finally opened my laptop again. The message was still there, unchanged. I clicked reply. Preston, I'm available Monday at 10. Landon, short, neutral, controlled. I sent it, then closed my laptop without rereading it. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a conclusion. Monday arrived with the same calm clarity I had felt all week. The glass doors of Stratford & Co. reflected back a place that no longer felt familiar. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The receptionist hesitated for a split second when I walked in, then offered a polite smile that didn't quite settle. Upstairs, the atmosphere was different, quieter, tighter. People looked up as I passed, not curious this time, but aware. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Screens suddenly became more interesting than they had been seconds before. They knew. I reached Preston's office and knocked once before stepping inside. He looked up immediately. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The difference was clear. The man sitting across from me wasn't the same one from that dinner. The confidence was still there, but it was strained, now held together by something thinner than before. "Thanks for coming," he said, gesturing toward the chair. I sat down, crossing one leg over the other, hands resting calmly in my lap. "Of course," I replied. He leaned forward, slightly exhaling. "I won't waste your time. We need you back." I said nothing. Just let the words sit between us. Because this time, silence was doing all the work. I let him finish. The offer was everything he should have given me years ago. A senior executive title, full authority over operations. A salary that finally matched the value I had always delivered. I listened without interrupting. Then I asked one question. If I hadn't left, would you be offering me this now? He didn't answer. He couldn't. That was all I needed. I stood up slowly, smoothing my blazer the same way I had done 100 times before, walking out of meetings that mattered. Only this time, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about closing something. "You didn't lose me when I resigned," I said calmly. "You lost me long before that. You just didn't notice." His silence followed me to the door. I paused for a brief second, then added almost gently, "Next time, don't wait until it cost you everything to recognize someone's worth." Then I walked out. And this time, I didn't look back. A week later, I heard the final update. Preston was gone. The board had removed him after the client losses became impossible to ignore. I leaned back in my chair, coffee warm in my hands, sunlight spilling across my new office. He thought I was replaceable. Turns out I wasn't. He was. There's a moment in life when you realize staying quiet isn't strength anymore, it's permission. I didn't walk away because I was weak. I walked away because I finally saw my own value clearly. If you were in my place, would you stay and wait? Or choose yourself and step into something better? Think about that. And if this story made you pause, even for a second, your support, subscribing, liking, sharing, or leaving a comment can help it reach someone else who needs that same clarity. You're not just watching, you're helping someone find their turning point. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.